Senator Cotton.
Yeah, I'll just continue where Senator King left off. I mean, even if there is a legitimate use to it, why would we sell it to China? Why would we authorize it to be sold to China? I mean, they're not France, not Sweden. So I don't think we should sell it to China regardless, even if there is a legitimate use. And if the administration can't do that with its existing authorities, then perhaps Congress should explore giving you more authorities to do so. I mean, Mr. Cristino, I know you have a lot of experience in this field. Did we sell crowd control and policing equipment and technology to the Soviet Union when it existed?
No, sir.
So why would we sell it to China now, since China is our #1 geopolitical rival going forward in the coming decades, and they're plainly using this kind of technology in Xinjiang to oppress their own people and to build their national power in a way to challenge us. I mean, one of the reasons why China has been able to turn its focus outward onto the Blue Seas and challenge us inside the first island chain and in the South China Sea is that they've gained greater control of their internal borders, especially in Xinjiang and Tibet. And I turn now, Ambassador Currie, to you, and something you said earlier I want to just explore a little bit further and ask if you could elaborate. You talked about the concept of a pilot program. You know, some of these techniques first piloted in Tibet, now they've been rolled out on greater and more advanced scale in Xinjiang, potentially going to the rest of China. Could you elaborate, please, on that?
Certainly, Senator Cotton. I think our understanding is that after the 2008 events in Lhasa and the protests that took place then across the Tibetan Plateau, the Chinese authorities came in with a much more aggressive approach to policing and social control in Tibet. And they began both with policing, with the closely spaced police stations, the intense surveillance, and the control over religious institutions and cultural institutions, the massive political education, the pressure on state employees, from teachers to policemen to doctors of Tibetan extraction, who were forced to take political education classes, much more intensive management of monasteries in Tibet, and then this, they fused that approach, that what we might call community-based policing if it were being done for a proper purpose, but which in this case is really just community-based oppression. They fused that with a technological edge in Xinjiang, and doubled down on it, and have added some very particular aspects to it in terms of the restrictions, the legal restrictions that they've passed into regulations, and have made more of a put it under law, which is something that the Chinese like to do, to kind of create a thin veneer of legality over the forms of oppression that they're using against these minority communities.
Thank you for that. I suspect that is what's going to happen. It'll be rolled out expansively throughout the country. And also another issue that was touched upon briefly earlier, the Belt and Road Initiative. Pretty tall mountains down there in Tibet, hard to get a road through there. So the road in the Belt and Road Initiative presumably is going primarily through Xinjiang province into Central Asia and then perhaps all the way into Europe. How closely connected is the oppression that we see in Xinjiang province to that Belt and Road Initiative, which of course is a direct challenge to the United States' position as the world's leading economy and the global military superpower?
Security along the Belt and Road is a major human rights challenge, not just inside China's borders, but across it. But they definitely are insistent on having a high degree of security through key corridors, and Xinjiang is one of those key corridors. Part of it, it goes beyond also the repression directed at the Muslim minority communities in Xinjiang, and what we're seeing in addition to the repression directed at those communities is the continued incentivization of in-migration and other activities to encourage the growth of the Uyghur, non-Kazakh, non-Muslim population in
By
Xinjiang.
in-migration, I mean, to call a spade, you mean essentially colonization, right?
That is, it could
The
be
data I have here in front of me
characterized.
says that in 1949, Xinjiang had 7% Han Chinese. Today, it's up to 40%.
Some experts have characterized it as colonization, yes. What we've seen there is also that the Chinese residents of Xinjiang tend to dominate the businesses, they get the state contracts, and they are involved in the actual infrastructure development that is linked to the Belt and Road.
And again, to call a spade, the Chinese that are dominating the businesses, they're dominating the businesses because the Chinese Communist Party is empowering them to have those businesses and disempowering all the native-born Muslim Uyghurs or Kazakhs or other minorities in Xinjiang.
Yes.
One final question. We talked about earlier about the loss of on a market for American companies and things like crowd control or policing technique or more cutting-edge technology that can be used for those things like DNA mapping and facial recognition technology. One common argument you hear from American companies is, well, if we don't sell it to them, someone's going to sell it to them, right? Reminds me of the old line that a communist's definition of a capitalist is a man who will sell us the rope with which we hang him. But I just want to ask you, who are the countries whose companies could pick up that business? And maybe, Mr. Cristino, this is better directed at you as well. If we stop selling this kind of technology to China, in which countries around the world are the companies located that would pick up that business from American companies?
Well, sir, with regard specifically to the DNA sequencers that were mentioned prominently earlier during the hearing, they're made essentially all over the world. It's relatively simple technology. It's not very cutting-edge technology. It's been around for at least 30 years. Some of the main manufacturers are actually in China itself. And you don't even need the item, the sequencer, in many cases, as we see on TV all the time. There's a great deal of advertising for DNA analysis. It's simply a swab and send. There's plenty of opportunity for the Chinese security services to continue to do what they're doing without U.S. items.
Mr. Currie, did you have a response to that one?
I would agree with my colleague that the Chinese, not just in this this area of technology, but they, as part of the Made in China 2025 drive and 2050 drive, they've definitely, the goal there is to make China technologically self-sufficient so that even if we do put export controls on all manner of things, then they would be able to produce them domestically without having to rely on external sources for items such as this.
Okay. Thank you both.
I have just